Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? So today we're going to talk a little bit. I hope you indulge me for just 1 second. My grandmother's birthday was recently, and she would have been 97 last month. And in thinking about talking about civility this morning, I thought about my grandmother because I think where I got some of my most civilized behavior came from lessons that weren't necessarily requested from her, but kind of just came on occasion. Some of you may understand those lessons. So one of the things that she said to me that was paramount to my development in my life was that when we go in a store, she say, "Don't go in here acting all uncivilized." Somebody might have used that phrase recently, right? So when she would say that to me about 4 or 5, you don't really know what that means, but you know that you have to work within the confines of a certain or specific behavior. As I got older, and I was about to venture out into the world and fly my wings into Washington, D.C. and take on the big city, there was another thing that she said to me before I departed Winchester, Virginia. She said, people will remember not what you say, but how you behave. I was like, this seems like the same lesson we had when we went to the market a few years back, but they'll remember how you behave, not what you say. So as we talk this morning, we're going to talk about civility. There's an agenda here because that's what you're supposed to do, and I'm trying to be civil, but let's get past that. What is civility? So this is the formal definition, and every academic, every person that thinks they're worth their salt is going to give you some type of academic definition when you're having a conversation. And so the academic definition is formal politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech. Formal politeness. And so we all want civility. We all want to attain civility, but how civility happens within the workplace is sometimes difficult. And many of us are walking around not really knowing what that looks like, right? Potentially we are in spaces where incivility is normal and civility is something that gets called on attention once in a while. Maybe when the senior leader walks in, but not when you walk in. So when I was trying to think about what does civility look like, what is an embodiment of the word, not just a term, I thought about a movement. And obviously, there was a movement in this country for rights that were based on just civil behavior, human dignity. There had to be a whole movement, and Dr. King, as we all know, was the leader of that movement. And for me, in trying to come up with what that looked like and an illustration of what civility could be, I thought about this phrase from Dr. King: the time is always right to do what is right. In the workplace, are we thinking like that? Are we thinking about what is right, and are we thinking about the time to do what is right, and are we in active pursuit of what is right for our offices and our workplaces? So I got to thinking deeper about this subject matter, and there's a lot of information in the internet space and in scholarly texts that speak about this term. I actually think this is the hot, sexy term right now, if you're into hot, sexy terms, civility. It's really cool to say I'm being civil. I'm working in a civilized manner. But what does it mean? Language is very important because as we're talking with our staff, as we're talking with colleagues, we may not be speaking the same language. So let's unwrap that and define it a little bit deeper. So for me, in the workplace, civility rests upon 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars are engagement, respect, and communication. In the workplace, 3 pillars: engagement, respect, and communication. So let me peel that back. Engagement is, for me, people having the tools, resources, and supports to meet mission. So in the federal workspace, we are all about meeting the mission of the organization, and that mission being service to Americans. Every single one of us has dedicated our career to the service of American people. But if we're not engaged in the work, then how can we best serve the Americans and best serve mission? I jump over to communication. How do we communicate the needs of the office space? How do we communicate the priorities, the strategic goals, the objectives in a manner in which people can receive that information and then act upon it? in a very dignified and respectful manner. Then we get to respect. So you may be engaging people, communicating with people, but how are you treating people? So has anyone heard of the golden rule? So can anyone just scream out, what is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. The golden rule is problematic for me, right? Because that speaks about me. I am totally inside of that golden rule. Do unto others as I would have them, do unto. The platinum rule is the one that I like to go by. And I use our queen of respect, Sister Aretha Franklin. Because people often listen to the song, but they don't listen to the words. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me, right? So respect is not about what you want somebody to do based on your understanding of how you should be treated. It's based on their understanding of how they wish to be treated. We didn't listen to that second line. We sang the hook, but we didn't listen to the message. How does a person in your workplace want to be treated? Well, you have to ask them, you have to engage them, you have to communicate with them to even reach what civility looks like in the workplace. Does that make sense? But let's talk about that other thing that's lurking in the room. I love this cartoon because it speaks to me. It speaks to my office place sometimes. It speaks to meetings that I've been in. And the drink also speaks to what happens after a hard day. So do you want to talk about the elephant in the room? Only if we want to talk about the 800-pound gorilla. There are things that are going on in the workplace that we don't feel comfortable talking about, yet we're uncomfortable in the workplace. Isn't that ironic? I don't want to talk about the manager that bullies people, but it makes me uncomfortable so that I talk about it at home, but I don't talk about it in the workplace. I don't want to talk about the rudeness that I feel when I'm messaging with someone or when I'm asking for assistance on a project, but it impacts the way I do my work. I don't want to talk about people, yet I continue to be talking about people at the water cooler every day. I don't know what that one's about. And this breeds hostility. It breeds behavior within the workplace that's not conducive to productivity. People are entrenched, and so when new people come in, people tell you, oh, well, that's just the way it is. Oh, Joe, don't mind him. He's set in his ways. Oh, that's the millennials. That's how they look at the world, right? And so we're exclusive in that manner because we're not including people in a discussion about how we can be better in the workplace. We're allowing ourselves to just exist within the confines of incivil behavior. And something's wrong with that. We're not talking about it. And in the federal workplace, I don't believe we have time to allow this to continue. But some of you guys, like I have a CFO in my office, that when I talk to him about what he feels are touchy-feely things, he's like, what's the impact, man? What's the numbers? How does this impact the bottom line? So let's talk about impacts of incivility on the culture and how that culture affects your bottom line, because that's what some of you need as artillery when you go back to your workspace to talk about the impacts. So work effort decreases. There's a Harvard Business Review, and you can Google it, or if you subscribe to HBR, there's plenty of information out there on civility that speaks to the percentage, a high percentage, 42% of people who are in environments that are incivil, their work effort decreases. Why does their work effort decrease? Well, for one, they're dealing with incivil people. And so they're preoccupied with the behaviors that are impacting them in the office, and thus the work decreases, or their effort. Well, when your effort decreases, there's a pattern here. The quality of the output decreases. Overall, performance declines, and not individual performance, because often we speak to the poor performer. Oh, that's just that subsection of people. But people in organizations become poor performers when this behavior persists. Teamwork erodes. People don't trust one another. And for one, I have a definition of trust that some may like to think about. My definition of trust is care, competence, sincerity, and mutual dependence. That's how I define trust. So if you're working in a relationship with me and one of those aspects of trust are breached and our teamwork is eroding, we can speak specifically to the behavior and not to trust in general. Again, it's not people, it's behavior, patterns of behavior that become culture. The commitment to the organization declines, you see attrition, and then the only thing that increases in atmospheres of incivil behavior is hostility, where people just can't even get along to get simple things done. They can't work across business unit lines. Senior leaders don't seem to be adjusting to changes in their leadership environment and culture, and they tend to allow that to go through osmosis down to the staff, and so people start behaving at what they see. And these things have an impact on the culture of any organization. So what implications does this have for the future? This picture speaks a lot to me. I used to work for FEMA, and so anytime you saw a picture like this, you knew it was going to be a lot of work going on for you over time. But this picture speaks to the 4 R's for me. A raging river ravishes the road. I got 2 little kids, so you understand why alliteration is huge in my house. A raging river ravishes the road. This is incivility in the workplace. Not all at once, but over time, it destroys your pathway to success. And so what are the 4 R's for your organization? You can't retain people because they want to escape from an environment that does not feel comfortable. You can't recruit people because word on the street is you're not a place that people want to work at. Your reputation is soured because people are talking about the incivil behavior that's there, and the results of your organization are dire. A raging river ravishes the road. Retention, recruitment, reputation, results. Why does it matter? We're all here to meet mission. And the grand mission of the federal government is to support Americans wherever they are in all different types of work, from agriculture to education to defense. We all have a very sincere mission, and you're all very gifted, and I applaud the public service belief system that I can dedicate my life, not necessarily in military service, but in civil service to the betterment of American people. That's why civility matters, because if we are incivil with one another, the functionality of our organizations will decrease, decline, and our output for American people will be weakened. We can't cast a vision that people will respect or respond to, and we are no longer upholding the values that we say of the American Republic. We're getting far from that. We're responsible for upholding that, even when some systems in this city are not, right? The greatest obstacle to me is that the whole country wants civility. This is a great quote by Judith Martin. Why don't we have it, right? It doesn't cost anything to behave. My grandmother told me that early on. No federal funding, no legislation is involved. One answer is the unwillingness to restrain oneself. Everybody wants other people to be polite to them, but they want the freedom of not having to be polite to others. Wow. How true is that in your workplace? The greatest obstacle is you, right? Herein lies the accountability mechanism. I love emojis. What side of the emoji mainstream are you on? Now, I'm not saying that people have to smile every day. We're going to have off days. But if you're more off than on, then that's going to impact people around you. How are you showing up to the work? How are you showing up to the organization? How are you showing up to people who are looking at you for leadership, for support, for mission? So what are some tips? We'll blaze through these. Consider the atmosphere that you're in. Create a model for success for the people around you and for yourself. Monitor your behavior. Understand your hot buttons and your trigger points. Know what gets you hype. Know what gets you upset, because if you, to thy own self be true, right? Understand your organization and the politics and things that are going on within it. Engage people in moving the organization forward. Communicate effectively and not just talking. We love to do that. But listening, which is the greatest gift in communication. Accept people for who they are, their differences, their diversity, their ethnicity, their orientation. Adopt a framework of openness include people in the decisions, and influence the narrative. Influence the conversation in the room, influence the conversation on the conference call, influence the conversation in the boardroom. So what's the challenge that I offer to you guys today? Can't get away without homework. What do you need to start doing to strengthen respect in your office? This is a personal discussion with yourself as you ride home on the metro, and if it's delayed, you'll get more time, right? What do you need to continue doing to strengthen engagement? There are some things that brought you here. This is a choir stand. Many people here are open to different ideas about how to move their organization forward. So what do you need to do to strengthen engagement? And the last one, which is the most important one, is what do you need to stop doing right now in order to strengthen a culture of civility in your workplace? What do you need to do? Not your boss, not your leader, not the person sitting beside you, not the guy who snaps his gum in the cubicle next to you. What do you need to do to shift the behavior in your workplace? I love this final thought because it speaks to the artist in me, the poet, the person who likes to read stuff that is not academic at all, just books and narratives and prose. Civility is a work of the imagination, for it is through the imagination that we render others sufficiently like ourselves. Let's stay there for a minute. If we imagine people are as good a people as us, then how can we not treat them with tolerance and respect? So civility doesn't exist as normal. It's something that we have to produce through our behavior. And if we can imagine that others are as good a people as us, how can we not treat them with respect? How can we not tolerate them? How can we not even show them affection? Just wanted you to think about that and understand that you are the only person that may change the culture within your organization and that may open your organization up to the possibilities of the future. Thank you for your time.